Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be testing out the new Alter Ego Mirage eyeshadow palette. So before we get into it, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel before you leave. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy, and let's get into it. Okay, so this is the new Mirage eyeshadow palette from Alter Ego. This is launching on October 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and this is going to retail for $24 US. This does have a 12-month shelf life and is made in the PRC. And the packaging, you can see, is so beautiful. And taking a look at the inner palette, so again, it just completely mirrors the box. One thing Alter Ego does so super well is their packaging. The artwork is always absolutely stunning. It is this soft touch matte feel, and it is just a cardboard palette. So if you're not familiar with Alter Ego, they create affordable alternatives to popular high-end eyeshadow palettes. They have created alternatives for Pat McGrath, Natasha Denona, ABH, and I believe this one is meant to be an alternative to the Huda Beauty Empowered palette that was their holiday launch for last year. So I never picked up the Empowered palette last year, so I was incredibly excited to receive this. Opening up the palette, you can see what I'm talking about, and I will pop up a photo of the Empowered palette so you can kind of see them side by side. And one thing about the Empowered palette, they did have more of like a gel type shade, and Alter Ego has added that in as well. The Huda also has two cream shades and a purple and a black, and those two are right here. So it looks like they've done a really great job color story wise. My past experience, the color stories are very similar. On the eyes, very similar. The tones are slightly different, but they usually are similar enough. So today we're going to be creating 3 different looks. I'll do one on each eye, and then I will settle on one to wear for the rest of the day, and then I will share my final thoughts. Another thing I wanted to mention, and I've noticed this in past palettes as well from them, is their layout just makes more sense. Sometimes when I think about Natasha Denona, ABH in particular, the color stories are kind of all over the map. When I look at them, I can't figure out why they laid out a palette the way that they did. Some brands it makes sense, some brands it just doesn't. I find with Alter Ego it always makes good sense the way they lay out the palette. Let's look at some swatches and then we will get to creating 3 different looks. Alright, so let's take a look at the swatches. Going across, we have Clay, Wander, Cleopatra, Odyssey, Tomb, Nirvana, Bush, Heat, Carrot, Pyramid. Then we have Endless, Stone, Dunes, Arid, Sirocco, and this is the one that's got like a bit of a gel consistency to it, Conquer, and then we have the 2 creams at the bottom, which are Crypt and Dusk. So beautiful color story. Honestly, swatching it out really helped me figure out what I might want to do with this palette. These shades actually look incredibly pigmented, incredibly beautiful. The mattes are super buttery to the touch. Even the shades that kind of intimidated me a little bit, the creams and the gel type formula, were actually really easy to work with. So let's get into creating some different looks. So for look number 1, I think I'm going to start with the shade Nirvana. And I have already primed my eyes with the Alter Ego eyeshadow base and set it with some powder. That is pigmented, okay. And I should mention this video is not sponsored. They just very kindly sent this over to me in advance of the launch, so I am incredibly grateful and thank them for that. Okay, that was really pigmented but also blended very easily. Alright, from there I'm going to grab the shade Stone just to further deepen that outer corner. These shades are incredibly pigmented. I think in some of their previous palettes I've often found that they were more on the buildable side. These are actually very pigmented. I am just going in with a slightly denser brush just to add in a little bit more of Stone to the outer corner. Just a little bit though, just to really get that depth that I'm looking for. Then I'm going to grab Odyssey on a finger, and I think I'm just going to put this one all over the lid. I think we are just going to go for that deep purple very fall kind of look on this eye. So definitely on the deeper side for me. I'm going to grab a little bit of Conquer, and I just want to use that to blend that lid shade into those outer corner shades. Just grabbing my crease brush again, just wanting to go in and blend. And I think I'm just going to grab a little bit of clay. Just one quick dip. I just want to use this one to sort of brighten that inner corner just a little bit. Oh, that came together nicely. And you could definitely drag one of these mats around the lower lash line. I am a big fan of the naked lower lash line, in my opinion. I like that. First, we have a deeper purple look. Let me pop on some mascara. I'll come back and show you what it looks like, and then we will get into look number 2. All right, so here is look number 1. Again, a lot deeper than I would typically go for. Definitely leaning heavy into those deeper purple tones, but very much a fall appropriate look for sure. Let's get into look number 2. I'm going to start with the shade Clay. I can see myself starting with this one a lot. This one kind of reminds me of Orange Soda from ABH that was in the Soft Glam palette. From there, I'm going to go into Tomb, starting to be a little bit more careful with how much I pick up because these are very pigmented. However, they are still very, very blendable. I find that with this palette, even if you do pick up too much, it's easy enough to fix. This is such a phenomenal formula for the price point. I think I've said this in previous reviews that I really do think their formula it's one of the best affordable formulas I've ever tried. And quite honestly, I am very, very picky about eyeshadows, particularly affordable ones. I don't find that a lot of affordable eyeshadows are that great. So if I'm in love with an affordable formula, I think that tells me a lot. I'm gonna grab Endless now for the outer corner. Again, being careful with how much I grab on this one. Just grabbing my blending brush again, just to really get around those edges. Then I'm gonna grab Carrot, which isn't a shade I'm probably going to use a ton. I don't love these more yellowy gold tones, but this one is going to go all over the lid. I also want to see how much fallout I get with this one. That is actually adhering to the lid really, really nicely. I obviously can't compare this to the Huda palette. I don't have that one, and I am a big fan of Huda's eyeshadows. I always say that she is the queen of texture. So I do think it's a bit of a bold move to try to duplicate her palettes, but so far I think they've done a pretty good job. And that glitter, that glitter did get everywhere, so I'm just going in with a spoolie to kind of remove some of that. That is a great little trick if you get glitter fallout. Sometimes just lightly running a spoolie over top takes it away better than anything else. Okay, I think I might actually grab that tiny brush again and go into Conquer really quickly just to kind of mesh that gold into the outer purples a little bit more. I know this is a pretty color combo. I think we just need a little bit to mesh. And then grabbing my crease brush again just to blend those edges. All right, so there is look number 2. So I'll just pop on some mascara, show you the final look, and then we will get into look number 3. All right, so here is the completed look number 2. I typically really don't go for these really yellow golds on the eyes, but if I were to, this is one of the ways that I would do that. I think it looks quite nice. I think this is a really pretty, really well done gold shade, if anything. The purple, again, not one that I would typically go for. It's just a little bit deeper, but still, I think it's quite pretty. So I'm happy with how these turned out. They were also just both very, very easy to create. The formula in here is very user-friendly. Let me take off the eyeshadow. I'm going to try to preserve the mascara the best I can and get into look number 3. I am just going to quickly start with clay. I'm going to use that as the crease shade. So far, I am loving how all of these shades are performing. We haven't had one that I'm not interested in yet. And initially, I was a little intimidated by the cream shades and the one more gel type shade, but at the same time, after swatching them, I feel a little bit more confident. The cream shades, I think, are ones that I would only ever really use as liners, and that's what I do with the Patrick Ta as well. That's just what seemed to work best for me. All right, next I'm going to take Dunes. You can tell I'm now in my comfortable brown zone. This one is just going to further deepen the crease and the outer corner. There's not too much kick up with these either, which is something else I like to mention. Now let's quickly dip into Bush, but very lightly. And this one is going to really deepen that outer corner. We're definitely going for that toasty fall kind of look with this one. I mean, I guess all of these looks have honestly been very fall. I do think this is the perfect fall eyeshadow palette. You get some of those deep purples, you get some really warm tones in here. Okay, from there, I'm finally going to try out that gel type formula in the shade Sirocco. This shade is kind of fascinating to me, to be honest. Just taking that on a brush. It did swatch beautifully with a finger, but I'm curious to see how it performs on the lid. I think the gel is going to help it adhere really nicely, but it makes it very, very textured and foiled. That is pretty though. It's very textured and very foiled. However, there's no fallout. So I do think if you have more mature lids or just more texture, I don't think you're necessarily going to love this gel shade. It does give a lot of dimension, and I love that there's no fallout with it. Okay, I'm going to grab a small brush once again, and I'm just going to lightly dip into heat. I don't know if I need to do this part, but I'm going to, just to test out the shades, I just want to use this to bring that shade into that outer corner shade a little bit. That gel shade is so metallic and textured and beautiful. It's a little more textured than I would typically like, but it is really, really pretty. So for the sake of testing everything, I am going to go into this black cream shade with a liner brush, and I'm just going to really lightly stamp that along the lash line. This is a little more challenging when I have mascara on already. That's a really nice black, actually. Okay, I'm impressed with that cream, actually. Same thing on the other side. I cannot talk while I'm doing liner, unfortunately. All right, so let me pop off camera. I'm going to clean up the eye area a little bit, and I'll be right back to share my final thoughts. All right, so here is the third and final look. This one is my favorite of the 3 I created, but I have really had a lot of fun creating with this palette. So I did actually get to play with a lot of these shades. The gel shade, I think, is one that you can make it look a little bit less textured. I just need to play with it a little bit more and kind of get to know that type of formula. But I do think it is really, really nice. It is really sparkly. It looks very dimensional on the lids, and there is no fallout, which I think is brilliant. So I do really like that shade. I just need to play with it a little bit more to kind of learn how to work with that formula a little bit better. The cream shades are actually really nice. I loved the way the liner turned out on this side, not this side. This side I had a bit of a struggle. So I was actually impressed with how well the creams performed as well. The shimmers, this gold here, definitely a lot of fallout, but also just very, very pretty, very pigmented. All of the mattes in here were also very pigmented. I wasn't expecting that because in some of their previous palettes, the formula was still incredible, but they were a little bit more on the buildable side, whereas I feel like this one is very pigmented. However, still very blendable, so if you got too much, it's easy enough to blend it out and fix it. So I really, really appreciate that. This also, to me, looks like Like with the exception of some of these shades down here, this looks like a very deep, vampy, almost too deep for me type color story, but it's really not. It's actually quite wearable and I actually really love it. I've really enjoyed playing with this, and the way it's laid out as well as the shade range, it honestly makes me feel so inspired and creative. Some palettes I open and they're beautiful and I want to put them on my eyes right away. Some palettes I open and I feel overwhelmed. Some palettes I open and I just want to create. And that's what this one gave me. So I'm really excited to keep playing with this one. I think they also did an impressive job with these formulas as well. I obviously can't speak to how they compare next to the ones in the Huda Empower palette because I don't have that one, but I do think it's a little bit more challenging for brands to add in these different types of textures, this gel texture, this cream texture. It's a riskier move because they don't always work out, and for these to actually perform really well says a lot to me. I've always said Huda is the queen of texture. I think she maintains that title, but I think as far as Alter Ego goes, trying to recreate those types of textures, I think they've done a really impressive job. I will leave my link down below if you would like to pick this palette up when it launches. You can use my code Christy to save 10% off the $24 price tag, which is amazing. Again, this is not sponsored, but I just wanted to let you know I do have a code if you would like to use it. Their packaging is absolutely beautiful as well, and I think they do a really great job duplicating the colors and textures while also not breaking the bank. So I really do think this is a brand to watch. I don't know, I think they're doing something here with these super affordable alternatives. So that's where I'll leave it for today. So don't forget, this palette will be launching on October 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you're interested, it will be available then. I will leave my link down below in the description box. And don't forget to take advantage of my code to save you 10% as well. But that is it for me today. Thank you so very much for watching. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload at least 3 new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!